Jiaming, how do you sell something that people don't know?
That's like my daily life.
You want to start by like explaining what you do first and then...
So I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner. I'm also a longevity economist. So I spent a decade being an economist, writing articles, talking to governments, and then I retrained as a Chinese medicine doctor. And now I'm a licensed Chinese medicine practitioner. I'm second generation after my father, who is a legend in Chinese medicine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that what made you go into it?
Actually, it's anger that made me go into it. I get very angry when people culturally appropriate East Asian culture. So I think it was I was actually working in Singapore at the time, running one of the world's largest think tank on longevity data. Came back to LA slightly, a few months before the pandemic, and I remember seeing something about Chinese medicine, like I think it was gua sha.
Mm-hmm.
And
what is that?
Gua sha is basically now is the trend now. Women use on their face to instead of Botox. But in China and Korea for the longest time is basically like, it's so much more than that. And there was no mentioning of the culture. It was suddenly this mysterious thing that just came up on the internet that, people find out of nowhere. And I was outraged because I grew up in the Chinese medicine business in my father's clinic. I was like, this is outrageous. But then I realized very quickly I have nothing to be angry about. I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner. I'm an economist. Who am I to comment, when I'm not doing this myself? So, yeah, it's out of it.
So you decided to study it?
I decided to retrain, which was a lot because it took 4 years. And I already have a master's from Columbia. So I was not your spring chicken, by the time I have to retrain this. But I wouldn't say anger was the only reason. I mean, I'm the only heir to my father's clinic, to his wisdom. Okay. And if I don't do it, he threatened that he would just take his secrets to his grave, how Asian men always threaten that. So,
is there like a family secret?
There were many because he sees on average 40 patients a day in China. And over 45 years, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of data. And so many people started seeing him when they were kids, and then now they're old, they still see him. The whole family see him. And to me, as a person who is a data nerd, that's incredible. That's a longitudinal data, right? So I was like, I think it's time. And by that time, my dad was already shocked. He's like, you spent a decade in economics. You're really famous. You wrote your articles. Like, why now? I'm like, I think it's more fun. And frankly, at that point, I had enough of feeling like I'm the minority. I'm the young one who nobody pays attention to. And also, I was angry. I realized that if I want to act, I can either be resentful or I can do something about it. So if that means I have to change my career to a certain extent, be it.
So you think your dad, like at some point, kind of gave up on you taking over the clinic?
I think he was always hopeful. Like he said, how Asian parents are. They're always quietly kind of like very obviously watching you and your progress. I think he was on the verge of giving up because I was already in my 30s when I came back to the States, after working in New York and Singapore for a long time. And you're on the way up. Like, why now? Like, right? 4 years. It's not, and you have to take a 5-hour license exam. It's no small deal. That's a lot of work.
So you studied in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Like the Chinese medicine?
Yeah. So the funny thing is in Chinese medicine is literally what they call acupuncture in the U.S., right? That's because the Koreans and Chinese couldn't agree, I hear, on the name. So they're like, fine, we'll just call it acupuncture. And acupuncture is the physical therapy part of Chinese medicine. So yeah, I studied that.
And you do the herbal medicine too?
Yeah, I exclusively do customized herbal formulation and diagnosis.
So my dad does that. That's how, I know about.
Really?
Yeah.
Your dad is a Hangul-sa. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to meet your dad. So.
But he's retired now.
Okay.
He's in Korea, but he got licensed in California actually.
Oh.
So that's why I asked you if you studied in the U.S.
So he has license of acupuncture from California. That's exactly the license I have. Now I really want to meet you.
So your dad your father's clinic is in China, or it's in?
So my dad's clinic is in China. He has one of the largest clinics in Northeast China. So I grew up on the border between North Korea and China. I don't know if
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
like
I've been to
Yanbin?
North Korea.
Like
Dandong, actually.
like
It's
right
where,
on
where
the
the bridge,
where the
right on the
is.
border. So I used to swim
Okay.
across the river to North Korea on a daily basis, and I think I must have mentioned that to one
Is
of my
it crazy
professors.
to live there?
No, I mean I went to Pyongyang like when I was like 11 or something. It was.
I guess it's
fine.
not for Chinese people. It's not as
It's not as crazy as for South
because like
Koreans
South
in
Koreans
particular.
can't go there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But like, they and also like I was a kid. So that was a long time ago. Now it's different. I wouldn't swim across now. But so that's also where a lot of the herbs are. The
Okay,
expensive ones near the Korean Peninsula and also in Northeast China.
I didn't know that.
So I pretty much took it for granted because you grew up in a business. My mom is a really famous geriatrician. That means like Western doctor who treats old people disease. So like at the dinner table, it was just about patient case studies. I was bored of it when I was a kid. Like you don't want to
Do
do
they
what your
make you
parents
drink
do.
the herbal tea like every year,
Oh God, yeah.
or the
for
herbal
sure.
medicine?
Yeah, since I was a kid, I had childhood asthma, so like that was like no, my dad must make that go away. So I wanted to do anything but that when I was a kid
Yeah.
because it's not
Same
fun.
here.
Like you don't want to do that. Like your parents did that. Why do that?
Like they always like bribe me with like, so I drink the medicine and then they give me candy afterwards.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked you about the family secret one is because so on my mom's side of the family, like for generations, they also do herbal medicine. And
Oh.
in Korea, there's this book called Dongbogam.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like handed down there's only like 5 original copies in Korea.
You
And
have one?
my mom's family has one of those copies.
Oh my
So
God.
they've been like waiting for somebody in the family to go into China. Like my dad actually studied medicine, like Western medicine in Korea.
Right.
And then he switched to like Asian Eastern medicine.
Right.
So yeah, like so that he got all into that. Like so we have like that cabinet at home with those little wooden drawers with all the different herbs in it and like
Oh, wow. I have been wanting to read that book for ages, but my speaking Korean is fine, but my reading is not good.
I
So
think
I
it's
can't
in
read it.
Chinese.
It's in Chinese?
I think it's in
Okay.
Chinese. Most like ancient Korean
Was in
documents are in
Chinese.
Chinese, yeah.
Good.
Because the Korean language is fairly new, actually.
I heard that's why when I went to Yonsei 한국어 학당, the summer language school, I was the only Chinese there because everybody else was a kyopo. So I was like, they're like,
and
what
you
is
got
your
by
purpose?
like not speaking Korean?
No, I learned Korean there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So because I went to school in England for my college, and then I decided to write my thesis, economics thesis, on Korean and Chinese economy. And there was a specific session on Korea. So like I
how did
basically
you
took
like
that
Korea?
opportunity to research. Love it. I am a huge fan of karaoke. I must have gone to, I think, Jinjibang, and then karaoke
like the sauna?
yeah, like multiple times a week. It was amazing.
That
And
culture is so unique. Like
yeah, but like I was in Sincheon and then like where the Ide and also like Yonsei University was. And I'm from the Northeast. So we look like, I think there were so many Koreans like where I grew up. So
that's
it was
true.
pretty fun.
like then also, I don't know if you've been to Yanbin.
Yanbian. Yeah.
It's like
The whole city is white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so many Koreans there.
But like, it was a lot of hard work, but I always learned from Koreans that once you guys are passionate about something, you don't stop. So I learned that very early on.
Okay. So now that we learned about kind of what you do, because what you do actually, like from seeing your content, is very unique. The thing with the tongue.
Yeah.
That's actually something I didn't know anything about.
Okay.
So how do you sell that to somebody who like, because the first question you must get is like, what is that?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
how did you get into that? And then how do you sell that to people that don't know what it is?
So it's interesting, and I'm glad you asked. I had huge arguments with my dad when I started using internet to talk about Chinese medicine because
So your dad's like practice wasn't
no, we have our separate practice. So I practice with him. I practice here in the U.S. He practices in China.
Okay.
But he and I co-write customized
Got it.
formula. So when I started thinking of creating Chinese medicine related content, he was against it because he felt you can't explain it. There is too much complexity and nuance here. People here drink ice water all the time. They don't understand the culture. How are you going to blah, blah, blah. And the medicine is so comprehensive. You can't just say, oh, I treat everything with a symptom, although that is the case. So I was like, what is an easy entryway for people? It was the tongue. Everyone has a tongue. And if I can examine your tongue and tell you a lot of your health symptoms, and I didn't spy in your head or something, you immediately will pick interest because otherwise, how else would I have known, right? And that is just a small aspect of Chinese medicine that is really social media friendly. So
why did you pick that? Yeah.
Because the other methods is a lot more nuanced. Number one, it takes a long time. If I take the pulse, for example, it's just too complex for people to understand what that is. But you have a tongue. Everyone has a tongue. I started specifically with celebrity tongues. So
was that by accident where you realized like, oh, people respond to this? Or did you deliberately plan to focus on that topic?
I deliberately started focusing on that because I realized after testing other content, which I feel still there has to be the learning curve. And in terms of social media at the time, like you can't, there is like just too much learning curve for something like Chinese medicine, especially what I do, which I don't touch needles, although I'm very good at it. So I was like, what is the straightforward thing? If I show you something that's shocking, that's interesting, you have something on you yourself. And then you will then think, oh, maybe I want to do something with her. And that's the tongue. So I started with the celebrity tongue that way. And it took off.
Yeah, that's so interesting because like I didn't know that I thought maybe it's something you stumbled upon because if you actually talk about like the pulse or the acupuncture or even the herbal medicine, those are actually even in the Western world more known. So people probably have like some sort of preconceived notion of what it is, even though it's like much more complex too. But I think what's so interesting about the tongue is that it's so unique.
Yeah.
And as soon as like I heard about it, I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Like it kind of piques your interest,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like curiosity. So there's that aspect of it that probably I'm guessing is one of the reasons why it took off. Yeah. Is like and then like I'm sure you want to kind of get into exactly what it is so people.
It's funny about the tongue because it's very tricky. When I do we do one-on-one tongue reading, that's one of the services we do. And I usually give back a 12 to 15 minutes video. But when I do it on social media, you see it's only 1 minute. So I have to pick the worst possible feature of this tongue, right? Because for example, the Beyonce video, I don't know whether you saw it. It was like a really extensive white coat. You basically can't see her tongue. And obviously, when I discussed with my dad, he was like, oh, this could mean a gazillion things, right? Because that is how nuanced Chinese medicine is. And I was like, well, based on this tongue, I'm going to only focus on the most important thing, I think, which is insomnia. And that's exactly how I planned that video. So it is not only to showcase the physical character of this tongue, which many people will have this symptom, and then the most dominant symptom. And that particular
How does that relate to something else in your body, you mean?
Yeah, but I will only, because when I have a minute, I will only focus on one thing. So at the time, I think I was talking about how it's not possible for her to have high quality of sleep. And apparently Beyonce's mom liked the video because apparently it was true. So yeah, I'm rarely wrong with my reading, but it's kind of, it's not so easy because you have a 1 minute, what do you focus on, right? And you have to speak in a language that the American society accept. I cannot just say, oh, do you understand what liver cheese stagnation is? Nobody understands what that means. You have to find relevance constantly. And surprisingly, me as a nerdy economist always turn to pop culture to find the relevance and find an analogy.
Was that also deliberate, going after, looking at pictures of celebrity tongues?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a known factor, she's a known factor. So I definitely, every single time we go viral, for example, with Kardashians, it's already a viral, right? So that's partly the thing.
That's so really smart too. it's like it's probably a combination of those things. Like the tongue, it's like it's so interesting, the tongue thing, because it's not probably a lot of people don't know about it, and then it's celebrity, and then because it's kind of like I see these videos on YouTube that goes viral, like where people do they read body language, so they'll like read a body language of someone doing an apology video or something like that, and like people, because it's a celebrity, people just want to know, right? And so that's really smart.
Yeah.
So you that went viral, and then what happened? How do you like?
So a lot of people would do the one-on-one tongue reading. I basically will read all the symptoms I see on the tongue at a given time. And most of the time they will come back and say, I don't understand how you can possibly know everything, but you do. And you create this
it's
kind of
almost like reading fortune or something.
Yeah, exactly. You read fortune, right? But like what happens when you go read fortune? They say, oh, something is going to happen to you next month. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to leave. Like you always say, what can I do about it, right? So the next thing is usually is an initial consultation where I will have a deep dive. And that's where the traditional Chinese medicine diagnostic process comes. But doing consultation with me is very different because most of my patients cry in the first session. It's because there is something very powerful when you understand someone when they go through a chronic illness. There are symptoms they cannot even articulate themselves, and you are able to tell them that and give them reassurance that they will get better because you've seen this before. There is something incredibly important in that empathy, in that giving moment. Because Chinese medicine is always about the mental and the physical. This is why most of my patients who are chronically ill will also have anxiety, depression, ADHD, like you name it. So they don't only just get better from the physical sense, they also get better from the mental sense. And in the consultation, we talk is their journey with this ailment that has plagued them for however long. And ultimately, you do storytelling, it is the storytelling. It is storytelling from their end to me, and me being the person receiving the story, understand it, and find a way to make them feel better. So it's an incredibly rewarding experience. It's unlike what I did before as an economist.
Is that something you knew going, because this is not first time I heard of this, because my dad's patients never cry.
My dad's patient doesn't cry either. Yeah.
So is that something you stumbled upon during your practice, or is there other?
I think it's a personal feature.
Medicine. Okay.
I think it's a personal feature. Because I'm because I'm an economist that focuses a lot on health data. I know the accuracy of your health data will determine your health outcome. And I'm also deeply interested in human stories. I want to know how you got from here to here. And so I am compassionate by nature, I guess. And that's what I found out after a year of practice, that I am obviously the second generation, but I do this very differently from my father. The traditional way is, you see your dad do it. Nobody cries. They take her
They just do the acupuncture.
Exactly. And then
give them some medicine.
Nobody really talk much. And then you take it. There is a level of almost blind trust to it, right? You don't know what they give you. You just take it. I always open my formula. So there is a 16-page nutrition and lifestyle report with your treatment plan, with what exactly is in your formula. And then many people, I'm sure your dad would say the same. Why would you open the formula? That's the secret. I have infinite number of formula with my father. Every formula is still today written by hand by my dad. And there is so much of family heritage value in that, because a person comes to you with their biggest vulnerability. You need to honor that by making them feel better. So I don't take this lightly as just you come to me and you're a patient. Just
So can you walk me through the first time a patient cried in front of you?
Oh.
Was that surprising? Was it
I think the patient was surprised.
What about you?
I felt very honored because I've always been a person who is interested in other people's stories. I'm a person who always preferred the books to other things. I think it's a deeply humane thing to hear people's story and what they've been through. And my first patient was a auntie in her 70s, and she was suffering this strange disease where she cannot swallow. She has a difficulty with swallowing. In Chinese medicine, it's called plumpy qi. And she was my first patient. And she was actually, I didn't have an Instagram. I didn't have anything. She was like my mom's friend. And then she started talking about her marriage, how that fell apart, and how because of that, she started having this weird ailment where now it's really affecting her quality of life. She can't talk much because she feels there is a rock in the middle of her throat. And she started crying. Her tears were pouring out. She was talking about how she wasted her years. She spent 30 years with this man and what happened in the end. She got kicked in now. And I remember I asked her, and I was happy when she was crying because I knew that she hadn't talked to anybody about this. Be really authentic and be really vulnerable with your feelings with someone. And that, to me, is a privilege. The worst thing that could happen to me is when a patient comes and they lie to you. Oh, whenever you ask them about something and they're like, no, but that's fine. It's not relevant. I'm only coming to you for this thing. That's when I know we don't have a connection and this is not going to go well. It's not so different, I feel, Chinese medicine to a certain extent. Certain way we do things is not so different from psychology. You're trying to understand.
Yeah, I was going to say they're getting free therapy from you.
Well, one of my patients actually said, she is like a coach, nutritionist, like therapist thing. What? I'm like, I'm just a Chinese medicine practitioner. But like, I think because in the old days in Korea and China and Japan, when you didn't have as much Western medicine, you come to this Chinese medicine doctor for everything. That was not even the case to ordinary people. It's like the emperor had Chinese medicine doctor, right? They have to be your therapist. They had to be your all kinds of doctor. It was a lot of data. To me, as an economist who studied data for a living, so whenever people say like, oh, Chinese medicine is pseudoscience, I'm like, what is science? Science is made with data, and this medicine has been around for 3,000 years. That is a lot of data. That's data you're never going to match in the Western world. And so to me, it's not just like family honor, like I have to carry it from my dad, or for, Chinese medicine, there are many people doing it. It's to do it the way I want it. To not only just to help, I think it's not to help as many people as possible. The majority of my patients are entrepreneurs. Is for people to live as authentic as possible. That's hard.
Do you have experience in like, or you yourself have experience like working on like mental health or like healing or trauma or anything like that?
I see a therapist.
Okay.
My psychologist is actually Canadian-American. No, Canadian-American? She's Taiwanese-American. She's based in Taipei. Because I need to talk to someone who, because as an Asian, I don't know about you.
It's like kind of taboo, right? Like seeing
it is taboo.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is we were raised throughout our childhood to imitate or to follow what your parents tell you to. My dad tried that. It didn't work. It fell flat on his face. I did economics. Is the opposite from what he did. It didn't work. But at some point after I had my own family, I had my kids, I realized that to survive, maybe not just to survive, but to thrive in this field where I help other people heal, you have constant evolving work to help yourself get better and heal as well. If you don't constantly work on yourself, you're not going to be the best possible practitioner for other people. So, yeah. I
work with a lot of clients in this kind of spiritual, like mental health space and these have like kind of self-help world.
Yeah.
And a lot of them actually, they start in helping people with either like chronic disease or like diet.
Yeah.
I believe like your physical and mental health is so related to a point where like I think a lot of the reason why chronic disease is so big right now, especially in the Western world, is like stress and like mental health. Yeah. Kind of like maybe social media has something to do with it. So that's why I think it's so interesting that you kind of cover both. Because like Eastern medicine, when people traditionally practice, they don't have that mental health side of like almost like talk therapy side. Yeah. But it sounds like that's like a crucial part of what you do.
So the funny thing is, because of the wars, because of the wars, a lot of the textbook removed the spiritual part from Chinese medicine. It's always been there. So for example, have you watched The Beef, the show?
Oh, yeah. The Netflix one. Yeah.
So I love that show. And that show gives me so many analyst analogies to use when I talk about Chinese medicine. You remember seeing when he got a stressful phone call, he was eating like two, like Burger King or something. There was a scene, right? And what happened when he heard the news? He started barfing, right? That's called stomach qi rebellion in Chinese medicine. That is 100% triggered by liver qi stagnation. Liver qi stagnation, I rarely talk about the terminology. It basically means you're intensely stressed. Your stress is impacting your internal organ health. And the weakest organ in you is the digestive system, is the spleen, and the stomach. So like it will trigger that. So the minute he heard the news, he was intensely stressed. Everything that was supposed to go down came back up. And the liver is associated with the emotion that's called anger. The spleen, which is in charge of digestive system, is related to the emotion that's overthinking, aka anxiety. This is why most people who have anxiety have also a bunch of digestive system, from like bloating to poor appetite to you name it, you have it. So this is why Chinese medicine is ultimately about the whole body. Whenever a person comes to me and say, oh, but I only have this thing, like I only have like hair loss on my head, I will always check your liver qi, like your stress level. I will always check your blood level because it's all relevant. There is never just one magic pill that's going to fix you, which is such an American thing. There's like magic pill everything. So I pay a lot of attention to the role of psychology, to the emotions to this. Another thing is, I do have this, and you will get this. In Korea, what happens after work? People go drink, right?
Yeah. Soju.
And you drink soju, you drink your, like all the booze, because most of the time, people are depressed. People are suppressing their emotions. You had a fight with your boss or whatever. When you're intensely stressed, you want to have some sort of energy internally to move that stress away. But our body tells us to do two things. One, to go for one night stand. Two, to go for like reckless drinking, because that is the fastest way to get some sort of energy. But they do the opposite to you. If emotion really has nothing to do with physical health, then why in Korea and China, liver cancer is the most prevalent cancer. And liver in Chinese medicine is 100% related to emotional stagnation, because we don't talk about our feelings. We never talk about our feelings.
What about like heart disease?
Heart disease has a lot to do with mania and restlessness. So a person who has red tip on their tongue is usually, so I think I did a viral video of like Britney Spears. And I think that video was taken during the height of her struggles. She had an intensely red tip tongue. That red tip usually signifies a couple of things: insomnia, restlessness, and mania. So when you do things that you don't even know why you're doing it. And the related emotion actually, interestingly, is intense joy. So we always say, like, I think there is a forward idiom in Chinese, you have it in Korean also, like you're so happy, like your extreme happiness lead to sadness. That is to describe that particular situation where you lost control of your emotions. You go from extreme happiness to extreme sadness. That's called mania. So
is it pretty immediate? Like once you fix whatever the root cause, does it start to show on your tongue? Immediately?
Yeah, so we do the comparative, we sometimes do comparative tongue pictures of our patients. So for example, I treat a lot of long COVID patients. Long COVID patients' tongue are of a certain type. And the most important thing is once they're on customized herbal formulation for a while, their tongue gets smaller. Because a lot of people with long COVID is brain fog. What do they have, right? Brain fog, extreme fatigue, anxiety, digestive discomfort, all of this. The root cause is usually there is a long-term damage on the digestion. A lot of these people will have a really puffy tongue. So that means their tongue is much bigger than the size of their mouths. That tongue literally shrink because you remove a lot of that dampness and a lot of the bad stuff that is causing you to have these digestive issues. So
like when you were talking about beef,
Yeah.
like a scene that I love from the movie because I'm Korean,
Yeah.
like that is so memorable to me is, remember when he goes to church
Yeah.
and he just, for some reason, no reason, he starts crying, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the,
Yeah.
like whatever.
He was
praise.
singing.
Yeah, in the middle of the song, like somebody just like comes and puts like his hand on his back and he just breaks out crying and he doesn't even know why, right?
Yeah.
But because like it feels like there's like all this pent up, suppressed emotion that's just all coming out at once.
Yeah.
And like for me, like that's happened to me.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine like how good that feels just to let that emotion out. So, and I would imagine it's similar when patients come to you and they're sharing these stories and they don't even know why. They just like start crying.
Yeah.
How much of that, because like when I look at your Instagram and your content and things like that, I just, at first glance, I see like a tongue expert, right? Or something like that. So just from this like short conversation I had with you, it obviously goes so much deeper.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like I'm so much more than the tongue, like, tongue person? And do you ever feel like, I wish people would know?
It's so funny because I am so slow in a lot of this realization of things. I did this early on, even before the tongue video, because I was used to writing articles that are published, that I was also, one of my jobs was to write for The Economist, the magazine, as an expert. Going from long form, right, like writing, to 60 seconds video, tell me your like story. I think it took me at least a year to process that, because as the only person kind of like passing down the family tradition, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I felt like if I fucked it up, my dad would be so disappointed. He was expecting me to bring Chinese medicine to the world stage. His greatest dream, I as well just tell you here, is one day when Celine Dion realized that her neurological disease has no cure, maybe he will try Chinese medicine and he will call me. That's his greatest dream. And I felt in early days, how am I going to condense my experience, right, of like this wonderful economist, Ivy League school educated, traveled around the world, and now I'm doing tongue video. Right? It's like such an interesting, like nobody from my policy economic circle could understand it. But I think for me, I never one day felt, how did I come to this? It was more, how could I do this my way? So eventually, when the patients come to me one-on-one, we can really get the good work starting. If the tongue video is the way to get people coming, be it.
So was there a moment when you kind of just accepted that? It's like,
I accepted it because I'm practical.
Yeah, okay.
I left home when I was 17 to go to England. I read a degree where there was no foreigner. I spent my whole life, my youth, being the different kid. The parents were the most famous doctors in town, and I constantly got like bad grades in math. Like, Asian being bad in math, who are you, right? And I had a lot of things I was working on. And so to me, like, being different was not a problem. It was more, the pressure came more in my head, where I felt, how do I represent our family story, this medicine that has been around for 3,000 years, in a 60 seconds something, until I just stopped thinking about that. I realized that I just needed to stop focusing on like what other people will think, and focus on more, if this is the kind of medicine you want to do, the way you want to do it, you just do it and see what happens.
Are you naturally like more like logical, practical type of person, or
I totally am.
Okay.
I totally am. I am more the rainy days, make every day a rainy day, read at home kind of person.
Okay.
So doing social media was shocking to everybody who knows me from my economic circle, because everyone is like,
but you're doing it so different than how most people, because the reason why I was asking is it's one of the biggest difference I see. I've worked with all different types of clients and
Yeah.
all different types of personal brands. And there's few characteristics of people who succeed, but one of them is like practicality.
Yeah.
Like most people, actually, what you've done, because what you've done is you went from being this like, world-renowned economist to having to give all of that up.
Yeah.
To number one, to
Yeah.
study Chinese medicine, which is following kind of what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then also even within there, like getting your name out there through the tongue
Yeah.
thing, which is like even more, like most people can't do that because they're like, I'm so much more than this. Like it's
Yeah.
their kind of ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
Even though that's so, like from my experience, the way a brand has to be built is first exactly what you're doing. First, you have to do the one thing that's gonna get your name out there.
Yeah.
And you did it both with the celebrity tongue thing, like the tongue thing plus the celebrity one,
Yeah.
which is, it seems like, oh, that's so shallow. Like what I do is so much more than that.
Yeah.
So most people can't swallow their pride to do that.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be known for and then you get your name out there to a point, and then you can start spreading all the, and then your brand evolves to something much bigger. Like if you look at the biggest brands in the world, they all started like that, like with one product.
Yeah.
They were known for just one thing, and then they got big, and then now they're known for a lot of different things, and that's how it has to be.
Yeah.
But most people can't let that go early in their career, which is, I respect you for doing that in the beginning.
감사합니다.
So from here, what is your, like, what's the next step? What's the next deliberate plan?
So before I came to Austin, interestingly, a couple of more things went viral, even more than the tongue. I think is my Asian supermarket series. Literally, you'll be like, really? When I went to video it, I swear, all the aunties, I picked the oldest 99 ranch in
Your audience is Asian or Western? Like
so I don't have Asian patients.
Okay.
100%. I have Arab Americans, I have Black Americans, I have Latinos, I have like Native Americans. I just don't have Asian patients. I think for a reason. Because, I mean, like, yeah, but like...
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because, can I be honest? Given the
Please.
Asians are cheap. We know we're cheap, don't we? We know we're cheap. And I think...
Or we know, like, we spend money on certain things and we don't spend money on other things.
So, like, so I will turn that into a question, right? Asians will be the ones who spend money on a Rolex.
Or a house.
Or a house, right? But, like, let's say, like, a Rolex. Something to show for. Yeah. But why? This is your house. What Asians... Me as an economist, we know house is not common goods. You're not comparing a piece of bread. This is your house. It's a fundamentally different caliber of good. So you should be priced based on the value it brings to you, not like you buy a bread, which one is cheaper. You don't even do that with bread anymore.
Actually.
Really?
I do, because Korean people are really... Like
you're really health conscious. I know all the medicinal wines you have.
Because they do spend like money on every year they do the poyak, which is like and they like those like those little balls.
Yeah.
That looks like chocolate, but it's not.
Yes. But like, here's the thing. Like, I see how my dad operate, right? Chinese medicine hasn't changed its formal practice for 3,000 years, which is shocking. It's one person, one clinic. People come to see you. You, like, check their tongue. You bum them. You take their pulse. You ask them questions. Like, here's your formula. My dad is incredibly successful. Mm-hmm. But I see how much it tolls on him. Because I think today's healing is not so much just about take this portion and magically transform you. It is so much about the psychology. It's so much about you understanding the other person. It's so much about, especially in a society where they have no understanding of Chinese medicine, right? It is so much about getting it right, making it a customized thing, which is what we are all about. I don't prescribe pre-bottled stuff at all. Everything is made to order. And I think when I started, I got told by a lot of people saying like, well, you can't succeed. There is no money in there. You can't scale from that. I'd rather have 50 patients who I can really take care of with, all VIP treatment, customized, everything, than serving a mass and you're really not knowing anybody. I know all my patients' name. I know they see me once a month.
So you're not really in it for the money?
Well, anybody who say they're not in, I think here is what I see. I'm not only there for the money.
Okay.
I am there to find an alternative between, if you don't want to be Amazon and you don't want to just be the mom and pop shop, better you can be in the middle. Okay. That's where I want to be.
So you're open to scale if you can do it well.
So one of the things we're gonna do, this is breaking it in your podcast because I haven't put it in my Instagram, is that because we have so many patients who need help with long COVID. And we have a family formula that has worked really well on long COVID. What we're going to do is a compromise where we're building a software to allow people to upload their information in the survey with their tongue. And based on that, we're going to use a majority of that formula but customize it. Yeah. So it doesn't include a 60 minutes with me every single time. We're trying to make it both customized but also scalable, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, given your personality, because
why?
Because a lot of people, again, don't know that you can do both. You can do very specialized service, high-end service, and you can scale. You can do both.
That's what you have been doing.
Yeah.
That's what you have been doing.
Yeah.
And then I think, to me, that's how I can stay true to myself, to the family business, and to innovate at the same time without facing the pressure of, let's say, a venture capital saying you must deliver certain things.
Are your clients come back to, because you know how traditionally they come, they do the consultation and you give them prescribe the medicine, and then they go take the medicine. But are you more like a coach where they have to come back and...
Yeah, they're monthly. So basically they come back for monthly refill. We talk, we do our follow-up, and then I tweak their formula when needed.
Yeah.
So, and then when they're fully recovered, I send them off.
So how do you scale that? Is that the part you were talking about? So how do you scale that? Because I can see how you can scale the medicine part to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
How do you scale the part where they need to get the mental health kind of thing they need?
So I think
or is that something you've been thinking about at all?
That is something that's interesting. I think for me, what ultimately I would like to do is for people who can find, if you need to educate yourself, I have master classes. You can download it and you can learn for yourself, right? Especially if you're not so serious. If you have
the basics,
the basics, right? I have the food grade medicinal stuff there. And then if you're interested in tongue reading, you can do a tongue reading. If you're interested in the long COVID formula, in the future, we're going to do other formulas that are in the family and we know that has worked. And we're going to do the semi-customization. So the people who ultimately come through the door to see me are going to be the entrepreneurs who actually need to be on top of performance. We can't afford to take a sick day. The people who have to perform all the time and the people who really need this level of support, because not everyone needs it. I mean, or
do you think it can be done in kind of like coaching? Where do you think you can train people to take on clients so that you can do that, you can scale that part as well?
I think in the future, probably yes. Especially, I'm definitely open to that. I think there is definitely a lot of people who are willing to do this the way I do it, which is a lot of the traditional people, even like your father probably will say, why ask about the psychology part, right? But I'm totally open to do the training. I think Chinese medicine, if we have been around for 3,000 years for a reason, especially given how picky and fussy, how cheap Asians are. So if it doesn't work, we would have killed it a long time ago, right? But you need to innovate. And I think there is a lack of willingness. There has always been a lack of willingness from the industry to innovate. And especially for people who now just say we're just going to focus on acupuncture. A machine will replace you in no time. I promise. A machine will replace you in no time. You can't needle enough of people fast enough. So it has to come from a higher place. That has to be customization. How do you make this customizable? How do you learn the right skills so you can provide that added service to your patients that Western medicine cannot provide? I think is going to be the goal. Yeah.
It even seems like almost like you're innovating, but you're almost like going back to the roots at the same time, because you were talking about how thousands of years ago, it was a more holistic.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like yoga is going through a similar, because like when yoga came to the Western world, people just saw it as like, you just get on the mat. And, but like that's actually a small part of yoga. Like, and there's the whole, you know, the mental and spiritual part of it, which is now, but now I feel like it's starting to change. Like there are some people who are starting to like adapt more of the old yoga into that. And maybe you'll be the one who kind of revolutionized Eastern medicine that way, right? Like,
I would love to. And I think it's funny because I used to do public speaking for a living, because as an economist and basically preaching to people how, you know, an aging society is going to cause whatever problems and what tax, that was my job. I would love to talk to people about at which age group you need to do what things so we don't all end up having exactly what our parents have. You don't need to always end up having arthritis, diabetes, and all of that. But like society takes that as you get old, that's what you have. That's not the Eastern way. And certain education, because ultimately Chinese medicine is a preventative medicine. You don't get sick. That's what we all want. But in the States, I think most of my patients come to me when it's like
it's too late.
They're already like, you know, sick. Or like I will have some like patients who have infertility problem, like they've tried IVF even 3 times and now they come to me. I think it's not only just it's also a mind shift.
And I think that's the best place to do it from. Like once you are kind of a public figure and you can spread awareness like through public speaking and things like that. I think that's when you start to really make a shift. And it's so funny. My mom always says like food is medicine. So like, you know, like that preventative thing is like, I feel like it's kind of in my family because they always talk about it. Can we go back to the Asian supermarket thing? Okay.
So the Asian supermarket thing. It's funny, we talked about your mom and the food is medicine. Food is medicine, we say in Mandarin, 药食同源. Like food and medicine come from the same source. And so I started doing a series where I recorded like a wood ear mushroom, which you also eat in Korea, like wood ear mushroom, jujubes, or like goji berries. I can't remember what else I did. And I would just be myself, like holding like an ajuma and then like holding like a bag of things. And I would tell you like, wood ear mushroom, like this could help. Like we eat them to prevent hair falls, right? Like that's what we do. And then I would say like, who need to be careful about eating it and give you the rundown, right? And that video, I believe, went crazy. I don't know the exact statistics, but I believe last time we checked, it was at like 5 million or something views. And it went absolutely insane. And from that series to like, you know, now we're at the weight loss one, like about Iran, which I know for sure you guys also have in Korea. It's a common grain. And those are food grade Chinese medicine. So they're not medicinal like your medicine, but they are food grade. They come from the same source. You can integrate them in your life and then get better at it. This is the same idea. Why when I do an initial consultation, I include a 16-page, you heard it right, 16-page customized nutrition and meal plan for the patient. Because it's important. You can't just expect, this medicine will solve all my problem. You need to change from your breakfast meal, like, you know, your lunch and dinner. Like, how would that impact you? And I design it in a way that's specifically based on your health conditions. So, you know, like, you know, I'm sure your mom will yell at you sometimes, like if you already had some alcohol and you'll be like, don't eat too much spicy food, you know, like you include that. I include it in there. And a lot of people say, like, why don't you charge people more for that? I'm like, it's part of the healing process. And my goal is always for this medicine to be sustainable. I don't think the medicine get to where it is today. You know, it's always gatekeeping. It's always people who speak the language understand it, like people who understand the culture understand it. And I realized that why don't we serve people from outside of the community?
Mm-mm.
And is it difficult for people to understand? Yeah. I mean, but like, it's also because you don't want to try.
Mm-mm.
You can try. And is it something that needs to be financially sustainable for the person who for the master? Yeah. You pay for really good health.
Mm-mm.
But this idea, this innovation to me is infinite, because that's how you're going to, if a medicine is just stagnant, it's not changing, it's almost like the yin and yang, like then it's just a pool of dead water. You're not going to continue. So for me, innovation is the key.
By the way, do you do that, the supermarket thing? Is it only at like stuff they sell at Asian supermarkets, or is it just like...
I think I did Erewhon once, and I was so cynical because I was so uncomfortable being an Erewhon. Because they have all these like single herb, like ginseng. They bottled it in a small bottle, and you can just take a ginseng shock. I mean, do you ever do that in Korea? No. Like, I that was more for satire. So, but I did it for Erewhon. The Asian supermarket one right now is specifically Asian supermarket.
Okay.
And I'm usually on the dry good store like session that you don't see foreigners. Like, so it's kind of like I got a lot of
there's like a specific smell in that aisle.
yeah, like you're in the dry stuff aisle. Yeah, I got a lot of weird stares, but
I feel like what you do is more of a education, actually.
Yeah.
And like raising awareness and things like that. And I think that's how you, I do believe like in the future, that's how you're going to make the biggest impact. And I really admire how you're going about it too, because, you know, like you said, like educating people and bringing awareness to this, like it's hard because most people just want shortcuts or they don't want to listen, you know, things like that. But the way you're doing it, I feel like you're doing it very effectively because I wish everybody would follow that formula where just, yes, you have all this knowledge and things like that. And when you try to like just pour this knowledge out to the world, most people are not going to take it.
No.
But you find that one little thing that is working and you just focused on that. And then slowly, and then now it seems like you kind of, you know, tripped on another area where you can now focus on that. And you do that long enough.
Yeah.
It just spreads. And then eventually you get to a point where people will listen to you. Like I always say, when you're not known, they only listen to you because of the specific thing. For example, tongue. But when you're known, they listen to you because you're known.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you can, at that point, you can talk about everything and people will actually listen to you.
Yeah.
And that's that's like the secret to actually building a personal brand. So I don't know if this is something you knew about or but you're definitely following that path, and you know.
I feel immense like gratitude that you told me that because I didn't. I think along the way that you're trying and testing, there are many. I think there is never a shortage of like, you know, some ancient stuff come along and get packaged. I do feel that me being second generation, I have a responsibility. You do it, you have to do it right. But at the same time, you know, these like supermarket things that go viral, we tie the tongue reading to it. And that's your first funnel. And your second funnel is when they see this video, they're shocked because I personally do it. And it's crazy how accurate it is. And then people is going to like, I want more. And then you want more. You have the one-on-one. So it's like a build. But then like, I think at the same time, like that's how it is. I had the biggest argument with my dad on the Whittier video that went crazy because he just didn't understand it. He's like, why don't you just talk about how you treat your patients anonymously and then, you know, from long COVID and they recovered in no time in like, you know, 3 months. Why don't you talk about that? That would be more Chinese medicine. I said, Dad, because that won't drive traffic. When you don't have many people listen to you, you have to drive traffic first. Then, like you said, they will listen. If you dump so much stuff on it, why would they listen?
You gotta build, I think eventually that's the thing. I think you can even surpass just the Chinese medicine and how you bring the whole mental health aspect and how you're almost serving as like a coach. Yeah. And getting people to open up their emotions and things like that. I mean, I think that's the ultimate. Yeah. But the way to get there is like one step at a time. Yeah. And so speaking of that, let's talk about that a little bit. So we met through a mutual friend, Minlu. Yeah. What is that like your day-to-day content process like? How do you come up with ideas for content? How do you actually, put out content? How much time do you spend on content versus like actual patient?
So Milu is my content guru. She manages my Instagram account. I do as I'm told. Now, however, I am a person with a lot of opinions. I am a Scorpio, after all. 3 generations of Scorpios, by the way. So I have my own opinions. So for anything technical, which is pretty much anything in Chinese medicine, I will have to do it. But Milu gives me ideas where how we package it is different. So you will see some of my earlier content when I hasn't gotten over my economist, title. Things are longer, the caption is longer, I don't go directly to the point, And a lot of the content from back then, for example, on PMS, debilitating PMS, which is abnormal, and we treat a lot of that. Now I go straight to the point. So it's not the content so much is different. It's like she packaged it differently. And I listened to her guidance, and it has done tremendously since then. I mean, we grew from I want to say 1,000 something to today in no time.
Yeah.
Which
I
isn't
think
crazy.
that's actually how, I think that's like the perfect way to work with the content manager because, at the end of the day, you are the expert of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously content manager can't just go out and do everything themselves.
Yeah.
But there has to be some sort of a partnership like that where, your content manager can scale what you do for the mass audience.
Yeah. So this way, basically, I can focus it's not for me, because I like to get involved. I even answer DMs sometimes myself because there is often specific Chinese medicine questions. Obviously, I dedicate most of my energy seeing my patients, but then there is always a portion of time I dedicate to do this because it is ultimately my business and you have the technical know-how, but Milu's role in growing the account, in managing it, in guiding me to the right direction is, I have no words for it. She's the best. You're the best if you're listening.
That's really, that's another one of those things that you would think is easy, but a lot of people have a hard time doing. A lot of people are either too controlling.
Yeah.
So I have to do everything myself, or they'll just outsource it and they're set it and forget it. And either way it doesn't work. It really has to be a balance of, both people looking.
But that's like the medicine. The medicine is about balance, I will have people who say can you make me 20.0? I'm like, sure, but traditionally the medicine is about balancing. You're sick because there is something that's not in balance. That's my working relationship with Milu. It's a balance. She does her stuff, I do my stuff, and how we can work together. And I think, coming from the economics background where you sit through for meetings, and after meetings, and then you're and I used to just hate this. I would be you could have just finished that in half an hour. And that's kind of different from what we do now, which is you need to get to the point. You have 60 seconds to get to your point, right? It's constantly a challenge. I often, if I do this myself, have to do so many takes. I'm talking to a room and all of that. But ultimately, it's for the greater good of the medicine. It's for greater good of America, I would think, because so many people are chronically ill. Nobody should be like this. In Korea, in China, in Japan, you have Chinese medicine, you have Korean medicine, we all come from the same root. In here, there isn't really, which is the reason why there is so much of misinformation. Because there isn't an alternative. There is either pharmaceuticals or nothing. So, yeah.
Or even though Eastern medicine that comes, I feel like a lot of times when we take an ancient practice or something like that, we bring it to the United States or to the Western world, we kind of commercialize it and we water it down and and it almost loses the
flavor.
core. And it just becomes superficial.
I have a lot of people who are big in the industry even, who are saying they don't understand what I'm doing. They will say the first question is always, how do you scale? How do you make money quick? How do you why don't you just sell your dad's formula? Why go this way, right? I promised my dad I'll be the person Celine Dion calls if she wants to try something different. How am I going to be that person if I'm selling supplement? Like I
I see
said
what you mean.
again,
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah,
I'm not trying to be, I can be the Amazon in this situation. I choose not to be
Mm.
because for this medicine to survive, I have a reputation to uphold. And
You don't want to be the McDonald's of
no,
Eastern
I'm
medicine.
not going to be the McDonald's of Eastern medicine. You know, I'm not like Papa Gummy, like, you know, fall asleep. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you know, most people come to me because they have long COVID, you know, whether they have long COVID, they have chronic, like they have endometriosis, like anything that Western medicine cannot do.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Why do Chinese people love Celine Dion so much?
That is a very good question. I think that is a very good question. I know for my dad, because he's such a nerd and he's such a master in Chinese medicine, is because he fully believes that Chinese medicine will make her feel better. And in so many ways, just knowing what symptoms she has, I think she should definitely give it a try. But like, you know,
She's so famous in China.
she is so famous. She's so famous. Like, forget Lady Gaga, nobody knows her. You know, my dad saw Billie Eilish in my bouldering gym one day, and I tried to explain how famous she is to my dad, and my dad is like, "She's no Celine Dion." I'm like, "Oh God." Okay. So there is that. Oh, people don't change. You know that. So
I want to kind of like, I want to save my final question, but I want to give you a quick like, maybe a guidance in order to how you can scale.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, there's that way of scaling, like McDonald's way.
yeah,
But I think for you, the best way to scale might be like to scale up and out, which is, you know, like if you can do more of the, like not PR, but getting your name
yeah,
and your message out there through other health experts or some other
yeah,
people like that. And then really like, because one thing I think in the long run, like, I'm going to be your fortune teller. One thing I see for you that I think will work well is if you do your own kind of a podcast. Not like this type of podcast, but almost like what you do already in your sessions.
yeah,
Where people actually get to experience through some kind of like, you know how, you know, when you watch Dr. Phil and people come on the show,
yeah,
you're learning kind of through this person.
yeah,
Like, because sometimes I watch that show and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that too sometimes. And you know what I mean? Like you almost like learn through that experience.
yeah,
And I think that can be really powerful for you when people actually kind of see a deeper dive version of what you actually do.
yeah,
Like that can be that final piece. Like maybe they'll start with the tongue.
yeah,
Like Celine Dion's tongue or whatever, or whatever, like, you know. But then eventually, like, it gets lead to, and then when they actually see, like, the whole holistic experience of, like, what you do with people, I think that can be really powerful. And
I think that's a great idea. Once I get over my nervousness about how to get a podcast started, because everyone is doing one in LA. But yeah, I think that's
I'm
great.
sure you'll figure it out.
I will figure it out. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And I can introduce you to people who would probably love to be on that podcast. Or
I would love that. I just hope I don't like get people who say, I'm going to read really what happens to you now. And they're like, okay, go. And I'm like say something that will embarrass them. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people like that are in like the health space.
Yeah.
But also the mental health and and then also the spiritual. And yours is kind of like a mix of
all three,
which I think is super interesting.
Yeah.
So my final question to you is,
okay,
what's like if you look at, you know, if you listen to your audience and you, from everything you see, what's like the one biggest myth that you think people believe that you wish you can make them not believe?
Scraping tongue is good.
It's not good?
It's not good. Everybody in LA, and probably even over here, think that scraping your tongue is a good thing. It's not. In fact, tongue is not so different from your period flow for women. And for men, I don't know, maybe your semen or something, like, you know, some sort of stuff. It is an important health indicator. If you scrape your tongue, if you have a thick tongue coating, that is telling a lot about your digestive health. If you scrape it, you're not making it go away. Everybody who does tongue scraping know they have to do it often every day, right? And a couple of my patients, like not my patients, followers on DM told me that they hurt their tongue literally by doing it. You're not, number one, making the problem go away. The root is still your digestive health. You're just brush it, under the rug. And number 2 is that you're also damaging potentially the texture of your tongue. And lastly, why would you not want to know something about, like, this is an important thing, is like, in the ancient time, this is not so different from x-ray. It tells you a lot about your internal health. Why would you not want to know about that?
Oh,
So
that's
scraping
interesting.
tongue is the worst possible thing. Like, I am the queen of telling people not to scrape their tongue. And like,
thank you for that. I didn't know that. I'm gonna tell my wife. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. It was
thank you so much.
It was an amazing chat. I learned so much.
감사합니다.
And thank you everyone for listening. And I'll see you all next week.